welcome back to FanCon 2020, the Scooby-Doo Panel. I'm excited, but also a little sad because, of course, this is part 4, if you're keeping track at home, and it is the last part of the Scooby-Doo Panel, but not to worry, it's an excellent one. And if you remember back in part 1, we talked with Maxwell Adams about bringing the Scarecrow into the new Happy Halloween Scooby-Doo film and how Batman and Scooby-Doo have a little bit of a crossover. Well, I'm happy to report I have another Batman Scooby-Doo crossover for you guys from Batman the Animated Series, acclaimed director. Here he is, Kevin Altieri.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome, Kevin. Like my segue?
Yes. It was brilliant.
Thank you. Thank you. I practiced in the shower. It's great to see you again. Last time I spoke with you, we were, of course, discussing Batman, but today we're going to be discussing Scooby-Doo.
Yeah. Actually, there's I don't know, they're actually kind of closely related.
You know, I was starting to notice that more and more. So if you can think of another way to remind me of that or teach me something about it, I would love to hear more.
Well, it's just kind of like Scooby-Doo is just like integral to the whole Warner Brothers pantheon of characters. It always has been, you know. It's like they I mean, even back in the day, they'd always like kind of sneak in the Batman guest appearance in the Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, Scooby-Doo movies.
Yeah, but it's like but the thing about just from an artist's point of view, from an animation person's point of view, when I was going to do the first Scooby-Doo that I worked on was after Batman, and I think I was doing Stripperella, and then I was doing different projects, Rat Bastard, Stripperella, all these other cartoons, Gen 13, and then probably the first in-house job I had after Batman was doing Pirates Ahoy, Scooby-Doo. And people said, oh, so doing Scooby-Doo, how the mighty have fallen. And I'm like, well, maybe so, except that maybe I really like Scooby-Doo, and I grew up with Scooby-Doo, so maybe I like Scooby-Doo a lot. And by the way, Scooby-Doo is not easy to do. People who go into Scooby-Doo as an artist and think you're just going to do a walk in the park are completely wrong.
Well, I think a lot of that comes from the established tone and the patterns that have been created. So I imagine as a creative person, you want to bring something new to it, but how do you bring something new to a formula?
Well, the thing is like the people who sneer at that, the reason why Scooby-Doo exists as it has for so long, right, is because again, what's important to a good cartoon is a cast of characters that you love. And the thing about Scooby-Doo is it's a joy to draw when you're doing Iwo Takamoto designs. They're so fun to draw and eloquent. But I say, like, Iwo Takamoto is just one of the most eloquent designers that's ever worked in animation. On top of that, you have Iwo Takamoto and Alex Toth.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And so for anyone who sneers at Scooby-Doo, you can take it and shove it where it belongs. Scooby-Doo is a lot of fun to do, and they're really endearing characters. And they're all fun to draw, and they all have, in the cast of characters, from Fred, Velma, Shaggy, Scooby, and Daphne, they all have their things about them that just make them fun. Every time you hear a line or you read a line,
sure,
you understand how to draw this.
Absolutely. And that was something I loved recently as I've been diving into Mystery Incorporated, which came out in 2010. A really interesting angle that show came in with was, we're going to take these characters you already know and love, like you just said, but we're going to give them some more flaws. We're going to maybe mix up their relationships a little bit and expand and build on what is already beloved about them.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, you look at it, that was actually a redesign of the characters.
Right.
but not a bad one. It hangs on to what's important in the EWO designs.
With a little bit of Bruce Timm sensibility to it.
A little bit, but it's still. I mean, when I was drawing for Vic Cook, when I was drawing on Mystery Incorporated, for me, it really wasn't any different. You know, the characters and the scripts were very good too, and they were fun. They were, again, it wasn't easy to draw. You know, it's like, oh, thank you for giving me the Phantom truck. Number one, I really like doing the Phantom truck and doing all these, you know, road rage kind of sequences. It was fun to draw. It was cool, but it's like, again, that ain't easy.
No, I was watching that exact episode not long ago, actually, and I was like looking at this truck thinking, this thing is complicated.
Yeah, I wasn't working for Warner Brothers at that time. I was actually at Hasbro, directing, I think, on G.I. Joe, which is a full-time job. And I get a phone call from, it was either that or Transformer Prime. I can't remember which. It was probably both. It probably overlapped. Anyway, and Vic called up and just said, I have a ghost truck sequence in the show. You've got to draw it. And I'm like, oh, man. He said, no, you're the best guy for this. It's like, you got to do it. And I'm like, okay, guess that means I'm not going to be eating dinner or something.
Well, you know, so I'm glad you brought that up, because when you're somebody who's brought into a project, when you're not working there full time, I think it was 6 episodes over the course of that series that you were doing boards on. But of course, that's spread out over time. So are multiple people doing boards on multiple episodes all at the same time, and then you get brought back later if it goes well? Or did all 6 episodes come in at the same time?
God, I know I trained him, but I think that was his first animation job. I hired him on Alf.
Oh my gosh.
And Elf Tales, yeah. So I hired Vic back when he was just a kid. Of course, I was a kid at the time too. But anyway, and the thing is, we've been in the industry, and it's like the thing about Vic, you know, and the whole group of people that we work with. We've been working together for a long time, so when we get projects, we tend to gravitate to the people that we've always been working with and saying, hey, can you do this? Like, I think right before that, I had done Dante's Inferno, which is a total rated R cartoon that Vic was in charge of, and he hired me on that. So, you know, the next job, I was actually over at Hasbro at that time, but Vic, you know, he hired me just, you know, freelance to do these sequences. Like he would pick things, and I think Doug Murphy was another guy from Batman. Doug was directing on the Mystery Incorporated, and they had like the flashback to the Fitzcarraldo moment of dragging the giant ship up the mountain and sequences like that. And they'd call me up and said, Kevin, you're the only guy I know that can just draw a ship out of his head. So for Spanish galleon, it's got to be a galleon, you know, for gold and stuff. Okay, got it.
Complicated sequences, it seems.
Yeah, but you know, the stuff's tough to draw. But the problem with me is, like, I enjoy drawing that, you know.
Sure. What
I like doing pirate ships. I like doing haunted houses.
Yeah. Which version of Scooby-Doo did you grow up with? Was it the
original
1969 show?
Yeah, the original, the first couple of seasons, and it's like, and then of course Scrappy-Doo and all that. You know, forget it. You know, just
right. And so then you were brought into the direct-to-video stuff, and like you mentioned earlier, I noticed this about Warner Brothers having this pantheon between the DC superheroes, a lot of it being Batman, and Scooby-Doo. They are churning out quite a few video titles every year.
Yeah. The first job after Batman where I was in-house, you know, I had done freelance stuff, like on Justice League and for Dan Reba. I'd worked for Dan and Bruce on a few things. But the first in-house job that I had was on Scooby-Doo Pirates Ahoy. Joe Horn was the director on that one. Yeah, no, and that's where I actually worked for Jennifer Coyle.
Oh, okay.
She was actually the first female director on a Scooby-Doo franchise, and I was like, wow. I was hired for just a few weeks. You know, they had a very tight schedule on those direct-to-videos, like very low budgets, very tight schedule, even though they look pretty damn good, I think.
Yeah, they look a lot more cinematic than the 69 series, of course. Which I think is a great way to liven things up. But, you know, the other thing is, back to Mystery Incorporated, I love how particularly the intro sequences before the theme song, really those are handled, even though it's a cartoon that we're all familiar with as this kind of a goofy premise with somebody wearing a mask.
Yeah.
The intro to that series is handled very much like a horror movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, actually, it's like that's another one. How many did I work on? Jeez.
For Mystery Incorporated?
No, I was thinking of the direct-to-videos. It's like you brought up the thing with the masking.
Yeah.
Which is like something that always happens.
Yes.
Always happens, you know. And it's like, and they had great characters like Ron Perlman was in Pirates Ahoy. You know, and he gets unmasked, and it's like, and I was thinking, but then the first one where I was actually directing was Scooby-Doo and the Shadow and the Goblin King.
Okay.
Which had a fantastic cast. It was like, was it Wally Shawn, Jay Leno, Lauren Bacall?
Oh my God.
Lauren Bacall sequence. She was like the head witch.
So what do you think it is that's attracting this talent to the property? Is it the history?
Yeah, I think it is. All these actors have children and grandchildren, so they want to be part of Scooby-Doo because, well, it's like, okay, going back to like the Shadow Goblins, which is the only one where the monsters are real. It takes place on Halloween.
Okay.
It's like, and the thing is, there's no unmasking because it has Tim Curry as the Goblin King.
I was talking with Maxwell Adams about this because we were talking about Happy Halloween Scooby-Doo, and I was saying, I'm like, I could have sworn there was something else done.
There was. That was Halloween night. Was Shadow the Goblin King?
Okay, see, there you go.
and some of the I did like. It's like in Lauren Bacall is the head witch, and I got to storyboard and direct the Headless Horseman, and it's the real Headless Horseman.
Ah, that's so great.
And Jay Leno was the pumpkin head.
There's a joke. There's a joke somewhere there. I don't know.
It's like, and it's like they had like they would gather these all-star casts just because, you know, it would please their grandchildren. And here's something on a side.
Okay.
But they were doing another Scooby-Doo, not Mystery Incorporated, but the time I was doing Goblin King. And the Make-A-Wish Foundation, they actually contacted Warner Brothers, and they had this little girl that wanted to meet the Scooby-Doo crew. So that's how important this stuff is to them, because when she was going through her treatments, it was like incredibly painful, you know, and she requested this, and it's like, why Scooby-Doo? It's like, because she would play episodes of Scooby-Doo, and when those were on, the nurses and the doctors were told, leave her alone. It's Scooby-Doo time.
Wow.
You know, and that's how important Scooby-Doo is. You know, it's like this little girl, it's like she just wanted to come and see us making the Scooby-Doo movie.
Well, and to your point about how strong the characters are from the series, they just feel like they know these personalities after a while. They feel like they're friends with them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's very, and again, going back to Yuo Takamoto, it's like when Scooby-Doo doesn't do well is when it doesn't look like the Yuo Takamoto designs. It's very important that those characters, the characters that I grew up with, I don't care if he's wearing an ascot. I don't care if they got bell bottoms on. You got to draw it.
Yeah.
You know? don't draw any, it's got to look like that.
Well, and I'm glad you brought up Alex Toth also, because he had this marvelous way of simplifying something, but there is an elegance to that simplicity.
Yeah.
It's more complicated than non-artists may think.
Oh, no, it's I actually knew Alex Toth, and yeah. And I talked to him, it's his explanation for that kind of stuff. I mean, he was kind of an irascible character. You didn't like push him for details and stuff, which I think is why he kind of liked me. But it's like, for him, it's something that you arrive at just drawing and not limiting yourself. If you'll notice, like Alex Toth's career, comic and animation wise, science fiction, do that.
Yeah.
Pirates, do that. Aircraft, do that. Cars, trucks, hot rods, Hot Wheels. Remember Hot Wheels? Yeah, it's that contemporary, same time as Scooby-Doo. Everything has its degree of cool to it, so you don't poo-poo anything. And it's like, so the same guy that could give us like some of the best, most, best war comics, best superhero comics.
Yeah.
He could draw like the sexiest girls imaginable, just great. And the thing about arriving at that simplicity, it's just drawing is kind of like how he would explain it. It's like you just draw. And all of those years of drawing all the complicated stuff, it seems complicated. It's like, when it comes to character design, Alex Toth wise, I mean, God, just watch him draw. It's like a magic trick, but it's not magic. It's years and years, and it's tons of life drawing. Like that guy was a life drawing wizard. And you'd see life drawings that he would do where it's this Rubenesque, complete, modeled, depiction of the model.
Sure.
And then you'll see other ones that are just like a musical note, done. And he doesn't put emphasis on either one. Both are just as important. Yeah, sure. It's like if you can master the Rubens or the Rembrandt drawing, shame on you if you can't do like the little G clef character design.
Right. Well, those gesture drawings are just as important, like you said.
Yeah. No, that's also Iwo Takamoto too. I keep bringing him up, but it's just like, because I would just marvel at, look, you look at the design of Daphne.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's just not very many lines there. But boy, if you don't get them right, it doesn't look like her.
Exactly. That is something that as at a young age, when I was, a way that I taught myself how to draw was I would take really small pictures that came in. That there was a magazine called Fox Kids magazine.
Yeah.
And they would have little character drawings in the corners of like the Animaniacs and things like that.
Yeah.
I would take those, cut them out, and then I would try to recreate them on like a poster-sized piece of paper.
Yeah.
And just to kind of, figure out scale and things like that. But something that I realized was a lot of the stuff that looked really simple to draw. If you, like you just said, if you get one line off, it just throws the whole thing out of whack.
Yeah. No, it's like there's an understanding that those guys had of like the structure and stuff underneath where they could take those shortcuts. It's just something that they didn't arrive at fresh out of art school. It's something that was years and years of professionalism they arrived at.
Well, cartooning has this wonderful thing about it where it is all about minimalism, but at the same time, there's a lot of thought that goes behind which lines are.
Yeah. No, and what I loved about doing Scooby-Doo, well, again, I've said this about other characters and stuff, but the thing is like you got to be in the head and you got to really love these characters, which is with Scooby-Doo, it's so easy. Yeah. And it's like, well, it's like what makes a scene interesting. It's like one of the first things I had was like, okay, the kids are driving in the van. And I'm like, well, this is something we haven't seen before. You know, I mean, it's like, so what am I going to do?
Right.
Like, well, Daphne's painting her toenails, puts her feet on the dashboard, which girls do.
Right.
You know, I treat Fred like that's her oblivious boyfriend.
Yeah.
But when he gets embarrassed, she'll take his arm. They'll do things. And I had Shaggy actually treating Scooby like he's not a human being, like this is his dog. So occasionally when Scooby's scared, he'll put his hand on his head and give him a scratch, you know. And Velma's like easy because she just got her nose buried in a book all the time. And you can just like, so it's easy to come up with a scenario to, so every time you do a scene with them, they're doing the thing that makes them who they are.
So staying true to the characters is what you use to inform yourself when you're storyboarding.
And whenever the Scooby-Doo series fails, and I'm not going to name which ones fail, everyone knows which ones those are, when the characters are not who they are.
Right.
You know, when they don't act. And the thing that's wonderful is like, you know, I think Frank Welker's still doing Scooby.
Yeah.
And it's amazing, you know, the cast. And when we were doing the Goblin King, we were there, and Casey Kasem, they were talking about not having him do this direct-to-video because he was 70-something at that time. I'm not sure, maybe even older. But he said, no, if you got Shaggy, I'm doing them. And they're like, well, we'll give it a try. And he says, no, my voice, don't judge me by how you hear my voice right now. He says, I'll do it. So he would show up at the recording, and right before his line, he took a lemon. He had a bunch of lemons, and he would cut lemons, and he would squirt lemons directly into his throat.
Oh my gosh.
Shaggy, dead on. And I'm like, oh my God, you know, I don't do well with acid and stuff. Like I can't do tomatoes and things. That would have killed me.
Yeah.
But Casey Kasem, you know, he rose to the occasion. It's like, no, and you think that guy, it's like, did he need the money? No. He loved doing the character.
At some point, I think it becomes legacy for people.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and he just loved it. And it's like, it's great. You know, I can't imagine someone else doing Scooby other than Frank, you know.
Right. I'm sure he equally just loves being Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Aside from the personalities, are you looking back over your previous work and going, all right, I already drew a shot like this. Let me think of
it this way. In relation to Scooby?
Sure.
Well, not really.
Okay.
I just fire ahead, you know? And it's like, again, I'm cursed because the one thing I like doing in the Scoobies is I like doing the romps, you know? You're just, the music plays and it's just like gag after gag after gag, which if they're paying you by the page, you really shouldn't take that job because the gags, you know, it's like, it'll be, oh, you know, gag inserted here. What is the routine?
Yeah.
Pirates Ahoy. Actually, that's what I did for Jennifer Coyle. She was, well, it was her first directing job. So I actually had finished, and I had 2 more weeks to work on the show. And they said, nope, you're done. They were happy with what I had done. And they said, nope. I said, but that's my rough. And they're like, looks good to us. You can hang out. You can go home. You know, we'll pay you for the 2 weeks we contracted you for. And I said, well, you need more work. And they said, well, Jennifer has a romp in her section. And it's like, so that means she's directing like a whole act, you know, a big chunk of it. And so she's got all this drawing to do. And then there's that one thing where romp goes here, you know, and it's like this big. Yeah. So I said, yeah, I'll do the romp. So, you know, so I just jumped in there and I did the romp for her right in the middle, which took like a big load off of her shoulders. But the thing is, it's Ghost Pirates, not really, but Ghost Pirates versus Shaggy and Scooby. And it's like, oh, what gags can I come up with on a pirate ship?
Right.
I actually swiped a Bugs Bunny one, you know, the Buccaneer Bunny one.
Yeah.
Like where he's going through the doors, comes down, goes into this door. It's like,
But
I actually enjoy doing that.
an homage. You got to have an homage to stuff. That's awesome.
Yeah, but I'm kind of pissed off though, because I had the thing where finally the pirate, like, aha, this door. He opens it up and there's a cannon. Bam! They wouldn't let. I had him screaming across the deck with a cannonball in the door, and he's like, "Ah!"
They wouldn't allow that.
No, too violent.
This was for a direct-to-video.
Yeah.
So you can't escape it. When you worked on Batman the Animated Series, they were pulling punches back on that show.
Yeah, but you do have to. It's like, come on, kids aren't gonna. It's like, no. It's like, that's not a monster. That's not a ghost. That's actually a guy that doesn't realize that he's a ghost pirate. It's actually a guy, so we can't do this.
I'll tell you what though. I've looked at stuff that came out of the '80s, and I scratch my head sometimes at how dark some of that stuff was.
Yeah, it was. I was responsible for a lot of that Saturday morning. I was on a lot of Saturday morning cartoons.
Well, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised they haven't done there's a lot of crossovers now with Scooby. Some of them make more sense than others.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised they haven't tried to bring in the Real Ghostbusters.
I don't think that would be possible.
Licensing reasons?
Yeah, I don't think so, because it's like, like when I worked on Real Ghostbusters, even though it's Columbia,
yeah,
and Michael Gross was involved, he's the producer, but you could not use the likenesses of any of the actors from the film.
Right.
So all of the character designs had to be, so you had to be true to the characters,
to the personalities. Yeah,
we couldn't use character designs. You had to come. That's why Egon is blonde,
right?
Because there was commentary originally. There was designs where we were making him as close to Egon as possible, and they're like, no.
I wonder how. Like the Scooby-Doo movies show, they were able to bring in these like celebrity guests like Sonny and Cher.
Yeah,
and they caricatured them, and nobody had a problem with that.
No, because that's Sonny and Cher.
So it was actors Ghostbusters, they were the ones that had a problem with being caricatured?
Yeah, it's Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray, Ivan, so they couldn't, there was no way, we were not allowed.
Oh.
It was like the characters that they played, and it just probably was the contract that when they go into making films, that they own their own likenesses.
Well, but they could still use the ones that were animated for the Real Ghostbusters and try to like have those.
Warner Brothers making a deal with Columbia, I just didn't see it happening.
With as much stuff as we've got happening these days, stranger things could happen than that.
Yeah. The Real Ghostbusters coming back in the original design, I think would be a big hit.
Oh my gosh, that would be legendary.
But I don't think that they would ever do it. I just don't think the powers that be would allow it to happen.
Man,
they did Sony did a Real Ghostbusters.
They had Extreme Ghostbusters, yeah.
Yeah, but it was like, who cares? It's like, it's like audience of 3 watched it.
I tried to watch it, and I was just like, I'm a huge Ghostbusters fan. I watched the first episode. And
it's like Scooby-Doo. It's like Scooby-Doo, Real Ghostbusters, Scooby-Doo. It's like the thing is, kids will go, Real Ghostbusters, and they turn it on and go, that's not the Ghostbusters.
Well, I'm really glad you mentioned this, because this is actually a key thing that I feel like corporations maybe miss out on is character above branding.
Yes.
That's exactly what we're talking about here.
Well, yeah, it's like when I was, it's like, not to speak ill again.
No.
Because, I would meet like with several producers over at Warner Brothers. I was friends with them and stuff. And I would get phone calls from them after I was long not on Batman. And just as an illustration, they would go and say, Batman Beyond isn't doing as well. The ratings aren't really what we expected. And I was like, well, why? They're like, why? I mean, Bruce Wayne's in there and all that. It's like, no, kids turn it on, and it says Batman. I know it's a different character. I know he's more of a Spider-Man inspired thing. I know it's futuristic, but you have Batman, and they turn it on, and who's this guy? And you lose the kids.
Yeah.
If it doesn't look like Batman, they don't get it. And they're not, you have Bruce Wayne in there as an older guy, and it's like really well written, it's really, and the design's great, it's like, it's well designed, and it's like, it's got everything going for it, but you called it Batman,
Yeah.
So when the kids turn it on, it's the same thing with Scooby. Oh boy, Scooby-Doo, and you turn on the TV, and it's like, who's this goggled-eyed weirdo?
Well, that's almost it's
like Scooby.
It's a self-defeating kind of a thing. You make a character so strong, and then once it's that strong, you better not stray from it.
No. And if you go to like successful things like sequels, the thing is like you have Mad Max Fury Road, which did very well.
Mm-hmm.
But the saving grace of that is no attempt at all to make a Mad Max movie. They're not doing the Mel Gibson Mad Max.
Right.
It's a different movie. This is a different Mad Max. And so it exists on its own. And it's a bit different world, too.
Yeah. And it seems like that's almost the best way to handle sequels at this point is you tell everybody, look, we understand how beloved the original is. We're not going to mess with your original. You can keep that. We are going to do something that is inspired and of the thing, but we're not going to mess with your memories.
Yes.
I mean, that's what it is.
Don't mess with Scooby-Doo.
Right. So what would do you want to direct more Batman or more Scooby, or would you rather do something that's completely hasn't been done yet for you?
All of them.
All of them. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, recently I did again for Jennifer Coyle and Cecilia Aronovich. I did 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo.
The film that they made that like wrapped up the series.
It was a DTV.
Yeah, which is such a great idea because the original series did kind of end on a cliffhanger.
Yeah, but the thing is, damn it, it's like it got cut for time. The opening, there was an opening sequence which I did storyboards for. Cecilia gave me.
Wait, cut for time on a DTV?
Yeah, there's time limitations, and yeah, I know there is budget and time limitations. I did a bunch of sequences in that, but I did the opening sequence, which takes place in the desert temple, and it was cut for time, but it's like the whole opening was great because it flashes back to the Vincent Price character as a young man.
Oh, wow.
And he's on this archaeological dig, looking for this. They're trying to find, this chest, the chest with the 13 ghosts. And it's like, I thought, so they're actually going back to the origin of where this comes from and why this character, this is great. So it's basically it was a Vincent Price with a Peter Lorre character.
Oh my gosh, how perfect.
Yeah. And it's like, and they're on there. And then as they're walking through, here come this group of characters that mimic. They're not them, but it's like the 1920s version of the Scooby-Doo gang.
That's great.
With a cat instead of a dog.
Oh, I love it. That's so great.
And,
this was all
that was so much fun to draw. And when they bust into the crypt, all these characters have their moments. That was just a lot of fun. And
that was cut, right? That didn't get made?
Yeah, that got cut. Quite a bit of it is still in the movie, of course.
Right.
But that cast of characters I thought was really funny. And it was good. It was a hoot to draw. And I'm just sad that it's like, it's not in the movie.
Do you have that sequence somewhere?
Oh, I handed the storyboards in. It's
man.
I think Jennifer might have them.
I think I see Scooby-Doo just in the background there.
Oh yeah. Scoob.
That's great. That's such great.
And I won't do the voice for you, don't worry.
No, I don't mind.
Scooby's my friend.
What was it? What was it when you watched the original show, the '69 show? What do you think it was that kind of grabbed your imagination about the whole thing?
Well, at that time, it was like an answer to Boy's Adventure, you know, and it was like Saturday morning was going through, you know, it was like they were like showing, you know, Johnny Quest went too far in many people's minds. I mean, it was originally intended to be on at 7:00, you know, so.
What do you mean too far?
Monsters, actual death, you know.
Oh.
like Race Bannon. I mean, there's the original one when you saw him on it was like, I think it was Sunday nights. Okay. At 7:00, but there was a body count in some of them.
Oh no.
Yeah, no, it was like where Race Bannon. I remember one where it's like this guy, he's like on Monster Island, and it was really great because these guys are like, here's Race Bannon, he's got a carbine, and there's a guy coming around the corner and shooting at him, and he's like, can't get him. So then he sees like there's a bulldozer over there, so he bounces some shells that go around the corner, and the guy staggers out and hits the dirt. I'm like, wow, that was pretty good. And then there's like the monsters like just grabbing guys and going, "Aye!" and dragging them off camera. You know what happens next?
Yeah, right.
The monster's not nice to him.
He gives him a kiss?
Yeah. No, there's actual things, and there's the one where the invisible monster, which scared the snot out of me as a little kid.
Sure.
Where the invisible monster, it like absorbs people, you know, it's absorbing energy. And people are energy, and they're like, you'll see people and then things will go negative and last shocked expression, and then boom, nothing. It's like, oh my God.
But from an animation standpoint, you gotta respect the guy who wrote character is invisible.
Yeah. No, it is great. And then they hit it with with paint blobs.
Right.
Brilliant.
I always love it when a character has a mask on that covers their mouth. They'll start talking, but all it amounts to is their head nodding up and nodding down. And I was like, whoever did that was really trying to save some time on that.
Yeah. So, I mean, after you know, like that was me. That was like, God, what was that? 67, 68? Scooby-Doo was like 69. It's like just from that first opening credits.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know, that's a wonderful haunted house.
I think the backgrounds are what sells a lot of it.
Yeah. And it's like, again, it's a lot of it's left to right, you know, a lot of that stuff. But it's also, again, Iwo Takamoto. Just the designs are, it's like, as a kid, I would watch that and, you know, and I would try and, again, it made you want to draw, you know. It was just so beautifully drawn, all of it, especially that first season. And yes, the animation is very limited, and, you know, and it is. But it overcomes it, and you don't mind it. We even say that with like Space Ghost and cartoons like that.
Sure.
You watch it, and I'm just amazed. Like, when I was a kid, I would watch it once, and I would just be watching the cartoon. I'm like, wow, that's awesome. And then you'd go back, and when it's repeated, it's not like, well, I've already seen this again. I'd watch it again and figure out the shortcuts and the bits of animation that they're doing.
Right.
And it's just a lot of fun to even do that, to figure that out. And I would figure out how they did limited animation just by watching the cartoon on TV. No VCRs, no VHS, you know. It's like there's no taping of anything back then. So you had to watch it when it came on. And that was actually kind of like part of the fun of it.
You feel like, oh my gosh, they're not really doing anything, but then you look at, they're only moving something when it absolutely is necessary, and it's very effective.
Yeah, and the thing about Hanna-Barbera is they would design things like, well, in Space Ghost, or let's say in Dino Boy.
Yeah.
Bronte.
Yeah.
All right. I could never get tired of seeing Bronte in full gallop. That is just a wonderful cycle bit of animation.
Yeah.
And the same thing with Scooby-Doo. It's like you come up with a way that Scooby walks, and you repeat it every time you see that walk. it's the same animation you've seen before, but you like it. It's like you watch it over and over, and each of the characters in their particular way of walking. It's like, that was a wonderful walk cycle.
Well, what it also does is it reinforces the character. Like you were saying about how important the consistency of a character is. When you have this consistent animation for the walk cycle, it's like, it's familiar.
Yeah. No, and it's like every time you'd see it, it's like it gives you a warm, fuzzy feeling. It's like here they are again. And it's not like you don't want to see it again.
It's reliable.
Yeah, and it's like they used it in every single episode. There was things where you would go back and as a way to save economy. But what H&B very wisely did at that time is the cycles and the things you would go back to are things you want to see all the time.
When you were working on Batman, did you guys have a lot of recycled animation?
Within the episodes, yes.
Right.
You would reuse backgrounds. You would but again, in Batman, it was more like I would say that I would use my live action techniques more than the animation techniques. So you would say that, okay, how do you economize? It's like, well, for this scene, don't have money, only 2 camera setups instead of 4. So figure it out in storyboard, So you would actually design scenes. It's like if you go and you have a character's point of view and he looks at this other character and then you have that shot of that character, the audience now expects to go back to that exact same shot. So you reuse that shot over and over. We did a lot of cycled animation, but you would do it like Man Bat, where I was foiled by the overseas studio. But Man Bat was kind of designed that when he's flapping his wings, you cycle the animation. You use the same flap over and over.
Okay.
But of course, when those shots came back and it's like, oh no, they're just doing it. Every shot, it's individual. They just went crazy. They just went, they didn't bother doing a cycle on most of that stuff. They just did Man Bat as he is. And there's that one thing where he goes flying by the Zeppelin, which was kind of like a simple shot where I actually designed the Zeppelin to be a held cell that pans past as Man Bat is hauling Batman, and he's doing cycle animation, and then it goes to full animation when he gets smaller and he pulls Batman past the Zeppelin. The footage came back. That Zeppelin is just animating on ones, and it's just coming by. Police on the side, everything's animated. Man Bat's looking back over his shoulder. He's just flapping to beat hell. It's like it's like they just went all out. They just.
Now, when they do that stuff, does that cost the studio more?
I don't think it costs Warner Brothers more, but it certainly costs them. But the animator is inspired, and he just did what he wanted to do. He loved the shot and wanted to make it his own, And that's hey, I'm not going to say no. No,
that's amazing.
Yeah, no, we would build in shortcuts, but and then we have like Feet of Clay Part 2. I had no right. It's like that was TMS deciding to take the ball and run with it,
Right.
They could have used shortcuts. They could have easily used shortcuts. They could have repeated things, but they chose not to. And God bless them. I loved it. Thank you, TMS.
Yeah, it's an incredible sequence that in Feet of Clay.
Yeah.
I wonder sometimes when there's a group shot, in Scooby-Doo specifically, you'll have one character doing the main talking, and then you'll have everybody else in the background. Maybe one of them will blink, one of them will move their head a little bit, and the rest of them are sort of stationary. And I always wonder, like, how is that being decided? Who's deciding when?
It's an intellectual decision. It's on part of the storyboard artist for the most part, directors certainly, but you do that to keep it alive, because in real life, you know, I'm not sitting here going like this.
Right, right. So, and that's interesting because when you look at, I'll throw Disney under the bus a little bit, not really, but when you look at a film that they would animate, and there's just a lot of motion, right? Or the
Yeah.
characters a lot, which is it's beautiful and I love it. But if you stop and think about it a little bit, it's like, well, there's probably not that much motion actually happening
No.
in real life. And so that's when you look at something that's more anime, or like, American anime, at least with Batman. You have like a news reporter and they're delivering the news. Well, they're probably going to just have their mouth moving because they're not going to be moving around a lot.
Right. No, it's like it mimics real life. It's like that whole
Yeah.
the whole Saturday morning thing of like, you know, and Scooby-Doo is like the proponent of it. It's like you have the group standing there, and yeah, Shaggy's in the background. He doesn't have anything to say, so blink, blink. It just keeps it alive, and it reminds the audience of real life. It's something you don't think about, but it's something that is how things really are. Does that make sense?
Do you think part of that is from less squash and stretch? Like when you remove more and more of the squash and stretch from a series?
Certainly. It's kind of weird because if you look at like the genesis of Joe and Bill, you know, Hanna-Barbera, at MGM, look at the first Tom and Jerry, which is where I really became aware of them. I know they were working there on different stuff. Like the very first one, I think, was a Christmas one, where they introduced the characters. And you look at the elaborate, absolutely elaborate animation. It's kind of the same thing with Chuck Jones. You look at the early Chuck Jones and the Jones cartoons. Young Porky learns about the United States, and Chuck Jones does like elaborate, beautiful animation on the level with the Fleischers, equal with the Fleischers, equal with Disney in just like backgrounds, character. They use rotoscoping to get the characters down. Like, you know, Paul Revere's ride is in the middle of it, and it's just crazy.
Yes.
How much is there? And then you look at where Chuck Jones arrives later on. The simplicity is incredible.
Yeah.
And yet, if anything, it's like I'm laughing harder at the later stuff that they did. It's like, good God, what's Opera Doc?
Yeah.
You know, the guy that starts out is Fleischer, and he wants to animate trees blowing in the wind and just the beauty of just leaves, you know, parting from the branches, and you know, and just like characters in the rain, you know, with water dripping off of them. And then that guy arrives at, you know, Kill the Wabbit. It's just the funniest thing. It's just the most beautiful, funniest thing you ever saw. And just the simplicity of it is amazing.
So is that a personal thing? Do you think the balance between simplicity and
well,
art, do you think that where's that middle ground for people?
I don't know, because I'm just looking at Hanna-Barbera, and you know that as the films, as they got more in charge, you know, with the Tom and Jerry's and all that, there was a period like in the 40s, you know, where they were really hitting something that was just brilliant. And it's like, and I know they're violent as hell, but I love the Tom and Jerry's. Like, especially, was it the Zoot Cat?
Yeah.
Tom's looking, oh my God. And I missed like when Tom was talking, you know, he wouldn't talk a lot, and he was such a goofus when he would talk, you know. Jerry never talked. He'd just make squeaky noises sometimes.
Right.
But then you take those guys, and then they become the kings for a while. They were the kings of Saturday morning.
Yeah.
And their experiences of going from the 30s to the 40s animation to getting simpler and simpler and simpler. You know, when UPA started, they weren't part of that, but even their cartoons were getting simpler. They got simpler designs on Tom and Jerry. And then when they arrived at Saturday morning, even the primes, I think it started with the Flintstones, probably.
Yeah.
Where again, it's like the simplicity, but they would hire the right people. to design it. Like I said, it's like as long as the drawings are alive, like Space Ghost, it's very simple animation, but that is one hell of a design. It's just, you never get tired of seeing that character. He can be just standing there with a cape flapping, yammering away, and all it's animating is the cape on a cycle and that mouth. Done.
Well, and I'm glad you him because this this month, I don't know if you knew this, but they actually released on Blu-ray Space Ghost and Dino Boy.
Yes,
I know. I was just like,
I want that.
Right? Right? I was like, this is such a great thing for Halloween, you know, having, speaking of ghosts, we got Space Ghost. It's perfect.
Yeah. And that was, it's the same era, you know, and it's like in Scooby-Doo, it's the same thing. Scooby-Doo, of course, I think the budgets got smaller and smaller. And I think when the quality of the Scooby-Doos went down was when less of the animation was done in the United States, you know. So those cycles and things were not there anymore, you know.
Yeah. And I know that's been a struggle since the 80s, is how much work gets done here and how much gets shipped over. Were there times when you were on Batman where the balance got thrown off and too much was done in one place instead of another?
Well, yeah, like on Batman, there was a couple of the studios that just weren't up to par.
Yeah.
But once the contracts were done, it's like they're going to use them, you know. And so ACOM and like Sunrise got a certain amount of shows.
Yeah.
No matter what. You know, you would go over the layouts, you would change layouts, you would, you know, call retakes, but there's only so much of that can be done on a schedule. And budget-wise, you're not entitled to wreck a studio by calling retakes over and over and over again. Some producers, some directors do that.
What do you mean they wreck a studio?
Well, it's like the studios generally, there'll be like a budget will go overseas. Say, you know, just throw a number out there. Say it's $10,000 for so much animation. Not enough money. Not really. So the animation studio tries to get it done. And then it's like, okay, that's off our plate. You know, that's done. But then it comes back. Now it's not done. That 10,000 is now 5,000. And then if it comes back again, that's now 3,000. And pretty soon you're just going broke. You know, if you do the retakes like that.
You have to keep shelling out money to get
the
result you want.
Yeah. So it's like just, you know, so it behooves them to do it just one time. And you get studios like TMS that knock it out of the park in the first take.
Yeah.
And it's like, yep, they're not going back. They don't have to spend more money.
Well, there's times where I'll look at a different cartoon and I'll look at the credits to see who did the animation. And if I see TMS, I'm like, that would explain why I enjoyed that episode so much.
Well, also at Deke, in the 80s, Deke was a French Japanese company. So we had, when we entered into there, it was like, I think Scooby and Scrappy-Doo and the Smurfs were up against two cartoons that I was doing at that time. And I think we knocked Scrappy-Doo off the air. But to be completely fair, we had TMS was doing a lot of the animation for Deke, because Deke was, you know, Deke was as much a Japanese company as it was an American or a French company.
Oh,
there was it was like a partnership. And like to get on Saturday morning, they had Americans doing the work in Los Angeles. And so all the pre-production was done here, same way that Hanna-Barbera was doing it in Filmation. And then they would ship the animation out. But our animation would go to Japan. And even if it went from Japan to Korea, there was still that level of quality that we would get that on the same budgets Hanna-Barbera could not get. Because I think they were using Mexico. And I'm not sure where their animation was going at that time in the 80s.
I do want to ask before we wrap things up here, what are you working on now? What can we look forward to you to seeing Kevin Altieri? What's like the next cool thing in action animation?
Well, I am working on I'm working on a movie called Killer Bowl.
Okay, that's written by Gary Wolf, right?
Yes, Gary, great guy.
Yep.
And I'm developing Killer Bowl, and that's going to be coming out, starring Sam Humphrey. And we've been talking. I've been talking to the actors, different actors. Sevda Levant Costner is on board, and have been talking to them about doing another Gary Wolf project, Ranger Raccoon, which is a science. It's a science fiction comedy. It's not what people would think.
We need more of those.
Yes. No, it's a lot of fun.
And
that one's going to be a little bit more where I would say Killer Bowl is a kind of a animation, kind of a blockbuster animation version, like a Blade Runner kind of future. Whereas Ranger Raccoon is more of a Tex Avery take on science fiction.
Do you have anything we can see?
I don't know if I'm allowed to.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't want to get you in trouble.
Well, I think some of this has been published, but this is like an image that
Oh man.
promo of Killer Bowl.
That's so cool.
Sam is like the main character. The main character in the script is actually written to star someone like Dwayne Johnson, And of course, Sam isn't like the giant guy.
Right.
But in our version, I thought, you know what? After talking to Sam for a while, it's like, no, he's going to be a good character. And so we're going in the opposite, and it's like the most powerful character is going to be Sam. He's going to be the first Kiwi superhero.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. No, and actually, once I started working on the script, where we take the character from being the biggest person to being the smallest person, but the most powerful person, suddenly being animation, that actually makes it the reason why you do this in animation. And it's a great take on a superhero. It's like a superhero. Suddenly it becomes a superhero science fiction feature film.
Yes.
And that is going to be kick-ass.
And some of those illustrations you just showed me, they're kind of bringing to mind some of the 1960s. Oh yeah, look at that. Like the military characters you see coming out of the Mars Attacks trading cards from Topps.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, that's I can never escape that.
Look at that. That's great. Well, thanks for sharing that. Wow.
Just the beginning stages. It's like that's just stuff that's at my desk.
But the beginning stages stuff is some of the most exciting because at that point anything is possible.
Yes.
Well, Kevin, I could talk to you about animation all day, and but I know you got a lot of work to do. So thank you so much for being here.
No problem.
Yeah, and we'll see you in the movies.
I hope so.
That's going to do it, everybody, for FanCon 2020, the Scooby-Doo panel. I've got more FanCon on the way, though, so just keep those eyeballs peeled for lots more coming up. But that's going to do it for Scooby-Doo. I hope you enjoyed this panel. I know I did, and go out and watch some Scooby-Doo. Happy Halloween, folks.